regular wear. Ihram is something that we only wear for Hajj or Umrah, but for them, the rida and the izar, this was the normal dress of the companions and the Arab. The last thing, okay, these are the different types of food. I think I tried using the example last time of jirish. I don't know how many of you guys know what jirish is. So it's like a barley stew, and basically if you cook oats and you in broth, right? So if you cook oats in broth, it's oats can take on the flavor of whatever it is that you mix with it, right? So oats, you can have them sweet or you can have them savory. How jadish is and how I think sadiq is very similar to that. Modern iterations of it, they'll put in like other vegetables and tomatoes and things like that. I don't think they have access to a lot of those things, in Mecca. But the oats, because it's easy to store, they had access to that. Barley, they had access to. So a lot of like the different breads. The one thing that you don't actually hear being talked about a lot in the Sunnah is rice. The rice, I think it was introduced during the era of the Tabi'in, and it wasn't something that was part of their regular diet. It was a very bread-based diet, a lot of bread, a lot of meat. I would imagine some fruits like squash and pumpkin and things like that, but I don't think like the regular fruits that we eat, like grapes and apples and bananas. I don't think those are readily available either. What the meals? So whatever the things that they would store the fat. They would store the fat as semen. Like tallow or different dairy products as well, right? So it's when you milk an animal, there are different things that can come out of it. Milk is the only thing that you can't actually store and keep for long periods of time. It goes bad. But it's very easy to make butter. It's very easy to make buttermilk. It's very easy to make ghee. It's very easy to make like other products that kind of come from that. So and just imagine you have an entire culture that doesn't have refrigeration, and when you don't have refrigeration, you have to figure out ways to keep the food as long as possible. And we had said before that meat, there were only two ways for them to eat it. Either they would eat it fresh, or they would dry it up. Right? And it was similar to what like jerky, that we eat today. And the reason that they would do that, again, because there's no place to store it. And the nice thing about meat is that the fibers are much tighter than. So meat, it actually takes a much longer time to go bad. So like red meats versus chicken. Chicken goes bad relatively quickly, and the reason for that is the fibers in chicken, they're not as tight, so it's easier for like mold and bacteria to get in versus red meats where the fibers are much tighter, which is why red meat tends to last significantly longer. Um, So I'll go back and I'll double check, inshallah, those different foods. Okay. So continuing on بعد ما جاء في قول الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قل طعام بعد ما يفرغ منه. Okay. So these are the things that the Prophet ﷺ would say before and after eating. Yeah. So over here, the Prophet ﷺ, every time he would finish a meal, he would praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying, all praise is due to Allah who has fed us and provided us drink and made us Muslims. So these are a number of the different dua that he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would make, right? So before eating, he would say the basmala. After eating, he would make this dua. You have the hadith of Umar ibn Abi Salama that we had mentioned before, like, Samillah kul mimma yalik, eat from that which is close from you. So over here, Isa is teaching us different adab and different manners on how to engage with food. Probably different dua. Yeah. This doesn't mean. here, every time the spread of food would be removed, and this is sometimes when we sit down and we eat, what happens when everybody's done eating? They'll kind of pick up the food, and after that was done, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would make this du'a: all praises be to Allah, an abundant, pure, and blessed praise, a praise that can neither be forsaken nor dispensed with our Lord. And what you'll find time and again with all of these du'a and all of these adhkar, the mention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the praising of Him as a way of giving thanks for the food that was just consumed. So we hear once as Prophet ﷺ was eating along with 6 of his companions, a Bedouin joined them and finished the meal in 2 bites. And he took like 2 really big bites and finished all of the food. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, if only he had mentioned Allah's name, it would have been enough for all of you, meaning that the barakah would have been enough. And had he mentioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name at the time of eating, then whatever food was left, he would have remembered Allah, right? So the purpose behind a lot of these things is when we sit down and we prepare for the food, the moment I take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name at the time of eating, this is meant to remind me of the blessing that's there. And not just that, when I become aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of taqwa is being aware of what also? Others that are around me. And when I'm aware of the others that are around me, am I going to eat the same way as if maybe I'm eating alone? I'm going to be a little bit more cautious. Maybe the bites I take are not going to be as big bites as I normally take. Maybe the amount I take isn't going to be as much. Maybe I'm going to eat a little bit slower. Why? Because you're going to feel shy about eating too much. And for any of you that have eaten at a larger dish, there comes a point, right, where the food is getting less and less, and you start feeling what? You start feeling more and more shy, right? Like, so when you start seeing less food, you start becoming more aware, and you start becoming shyer of because other people are eating, and you want to hope that other people have eaten their full before I've eaten mine. And this really much goes back to like the prophetic wisdom. And here he's always said them, right? Like he's teaching this Bedouin who generally don't have like these type of manners when it comes down to sitting and eating. And he's always is telling him in a kind way. He's telling him in a kind way, like, had you mentioned Allah, there would have been more barakah, there would have been more blessing in this meal. And it would have increased his awareness. And I think this is something that's important for us. And we find him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, time and time and time and time again. He never looked to be served, right? He was always busy serving others. Yeah, so when it comes to sometimes these number expressions that you find in the Sunnah, sometimes it's like here it says it's literally like luqmatain. Like luqmatain is like it's like 2 mouthfuls. So what could it mean? It could mean like that you like. So sometimes when we sit down and we eat, it's like, dude, you just swallowed that, right? Like like we make those statements like, oh, you just swallowed that. It's like, did you even chew? Like So there are things that we say, even in language, that can be representative of exaggeration, in a sense that okay, he ate so quickly and he ate so much. And Allah Alam, I think luqmatain is very symbolic of that versus coming just like actually eating 2 bites and finishing all the food. And Allah knows best. So over here, he sallallahu again, very similar to the previous hadith, said that Allah is pleased with the servant who, when he eats, he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it, and when he drinks, he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. Again, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanking him for the food and for the blessing. So I guess the one question is here we have a number of du'a and a number of adhkar. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has taught us. What is the ruling on making these dua or making these adhkar before and after eating? It is sunnah, right? It is something that is recommended. If a person does not do it, right, it is not sinful for not doing it, but it is better if he does. It's, in general, raising your hands and making du'as is fine with that. Now, at what times should an individual do it? This is not something that's specified in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. But if a person always associates raising his hands for du'a, at whatever point that is, it's fine. So, what's been narrated concerning the drinking vessel of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So over here, Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, he took out for us a thick wooden drinking vessel lined with iron. So it's like like a cup with like an iron handle type thing. And he said, "O Thabit, this is the drinking vessel of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So here, verily I had given the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam all his drinks with this drinking vessel, water, nabid, honey, and milk. So there's really actually a really interesting story concerning this cup. So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had a bowl, um, and historically they didn't have like cupboards, right? Where they would keep all of these utensils. And you couldn't go to the restaurant just and like I mean they would give you disposable cups and disposable things. A lot of times it would be common to travel with these vessels as well, because you don't know like if I'm traveling in the desert, what are the chances of me coming across a plate or a cup? So these things were things that would stay with them. So it's not strange that you find Anas ibn Malik who's like, this was his Prophet's cup, or this was his bowl, because these are utensils that they would actually travel with and they would go with because it makes things easier. Um, however, how many of us have ever been to a restaurant, we've been to a space, like the food comes out and there's no fork? Like what happens? So for them traveling with these things, it was something that was like totally normal, because it was important. It was like a tool for them, just like we travel with certain tools today, right? Like so, whenever we travel, like the tool we travel with is usually our cell phones, and when we don't have it, we kind of feel lost. So Anas ibn Malik, I believe that Nadar, who was Anas ibn Malik's son, I believe he sold this drinking vessel. Imam Bukhari he saw it when he was in Basra, and he was actually able to drink from it, rahimahullah. And then I think at one point it actually had also cracked, and then Anas he had it lined. So what they would do is sometimes when vessels would crack, because it's made out of wood, right? So it's natural that some of these things would crack. They would line the cracks with like silver or gold, and he would allow that. Um, so if they had a cup or they had a vessel, because not just that, making or getting a new vessel many times is more expensive than just lining it and filling the cracks with them. So it's not something that it was something that was pretty common. Um, the types of drinks that he mentions here, so he mentions water, he mentions nabid, he mentions honey, and he mentions milk. These we're all familiar with and we all know. Nabid is actually what they would do is they would. You guys ever had infused water? Like put like cucumbers and oranges in the water, right? Like you ever been to like those restaurants or those hotels? Right. Not a milkshake. It's like they have like a tumbler of water, and then inside you'll see like orange slices, or you'll see like cucumbers. Yeah, right. Like so, they call it infused water. So nabid is basically infused water, but they use dates. So to think of it like that. And what they would do is like they would actually it would be a way to store the dates, and it would be a way to kind of sweeten the water. And what they would do is they would actually have this tumbler, right? So they would have a barrel. One second, I'll get to it. They would have this barrel. They would fill it up with dates, and then they would pour water into it. And what would happen is that, and then they would cover it. And then what would happen after like a week or so, is that this nabid would actually become, well, not just sweet. There's something else would happen to it. it, would become, it would become alcohol. So, but before it becomes alcohol, it's all it is just sweet water, right? Just to have that taste and just to have that effect. But that's how they used to make. That's how they used to make khamar. Wine is made the same way, right? So any type of fruit, if you keep it for like a very long time in a stored container, um, it changes into alcohol. I'm sorry? No, it doesn't become poison. It becomes alcohol. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, most of fruits, yeah, all fruits. So you can do it with a lot anything that has like a carbohydrate base. So you can do it with dates. You can do it with grapes. You can do it with apples. You can do it with rice also. Mhm. Yeah. Oh, you know too much here. It doesn't matter. No, no. The the only thing it needs to be sealed. That's it. Uh, no, no, no. Yeah, it's because it's sealed. So it's actually the bacteria that makes the alcohol. Yeah. And what does the alcohol do? Alcohol actually prevents other things from growing. Yeah, no, it actually protects it from growing in there. No, because the bacteria that are there, what are they doing? They're eating the sugar, and they don't need oxygen. Mhm. Yeah, the wine doesn't have expiry. So yeah, you become drunk. But here, this is only here. Let me give you an example, like orange juice. If if I drink the orange juice like every day, do I feel anything? No. Have you guys ever left orange juice when it goes bad? Have you ever had it? No. Yeah. So if you leave orange juice for like you don't open it and you leave it for like a number of days, it starts fermenting. Not just expired, it starts becoming alcohol, and that's why when you taste it, it tastes bad. Yeah. So that so yeah, apple cider. That's how they make. It's a type of alcohol. Wine is made from grapes. Beer is made from barley. Sake is made from rice. Right. So different fruits produce different. Yeah, yeah. Even from rice. From grain. Yeah, from grain you have. I think it's beer. I think maybe it's like beer or something. No, all of these. So anything that has a carbohydrate base, it can become alcohol. So the auto abuse is what was your question? No, this is not a swing. But so nabid, the problem with nabid is like it's a term that was used before and after it becomes alcohol. So even when there's not alcohol, it's like us calling grape juice, even if it ferments, right? So when grape juice ferments, we call it wine. But if we keep calling it grape juice, it's a similar thing with nabid here. So either before or after fermentation, it would be the same. It would be the taste. That would be able to taste it. So even some of the fuqaha, they would say like, okay, you can drink nabid for 3 days. Hmm. Well, yeah. I'm sure the color changes, but I think the color is going to change even if you mix the water with the dates anyway. But I think it's probably more the smell and the taste that makes the big difference. So what's been narrated concerning the description of the fruits of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So over here, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu he would eat cucumber with fresh dates. Like this isn't the type of cucumber I think that we eat. I think this is like more of a not pickles. I think it's like actually like a sweet cucumber that the Arabs used to grow and they used to eat. I forgot what it's called. Yes. because they have to be familiar with it. Like just regular cucumbers, I don't think that's what it is. Yeah. But I'm sure you guys have seen it. Have you guys ever had Turkish pickles? Like pickled Turkish cucumber. Like you know how those cucumbers are like really small. Like this is what this talking about. Yeah, and they'd be in jars. They're easier to grow and they're quicker to grow because for the larger cucumbers, yeah, they're green and they're very small. They're green and they're very small and they're a little bit sweeter than the cucumbers that we eat. Because the cucumbers we eat, where they tend to be bigger and they tend to be larger, and there's more water and they're more of a neutral taste. And I think these are the ones that are a little bit sweeter. Yeah, Turkish, but I think they also were able to grow. Like in Taif, you're able to grow a lot of fruits because it's in the mountains, so the temperature is a little bit cooler. Also in Sham, Sham has a lot of different varieties, but I think the closest farming area to Mecca was Taif, and because it's in the mountains, the temperature was a little bit more temperate. Yeah. So over here, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would eat watermelon with fresh dates. And what's interesting is like the is like you have so many names in the different Arab countries for it. So it's like I think it's like Batir, Ragi, uh, Hub Hub, yeah, Hub Hub, Batir. Yeah, Batir is one. Hub. Yeah, I don't know. They're all a little bit different. But I think it's all the same species. Generally the watermelons and the tir, like in a lot of the Arab countries, they're much smaller, like they're versus the larger ones that we're used to here. No, they're seeded. All of the ones, the seedless ones are GMO. So over here he said, I saw the Messenger of Islam combine yellow melon with fresh dates. Um, so what's interesting here is that you have a number of scholars who include this in Deepen Nabawi, which is like, they say that this is prophetic medicine, and the reason that they say some of these combinations, like with cucumbers and dates, and watermelon and dates, and melon and dates, they say that there are different humors where there's like hot and cold foods, and there's like heavy and wet, or something like that. I think there are four humors, and they classify them like that. All of that stuff is taken from like Greek and Hellenistic thought. It's not something that's actually uniquely Islamic. I'm not really sure how that became Tib Nabawi, but it came and it became part of it. And a lot of times when you guys are here, you'll hear like, oh, this is a hot food or this is a cold food. This is what they're talking about. Um, and they'll say, oh, this is how you should eat because this brings balance into the humors and stuff like that. A lot of it, like I said, it's based off of like Hellenistic and Greek medicine. I don't know how what kind of basis is behind that. I'm very skeptical personally of like this hot and cold thing, but to each their own. Because the melon is considered cold and the dates are considered hot. Yeah, yeah. So over here, I think it's anything that is that has a lot of water in it, right? So like watermelon, melons, cucumbers, right? They actually compared to the dates are generally very dry, right? And that's kind of wet. I don't know. I'm just sharing. This is what I know. I know people talk like that, and I know people discuss it a lot. But like I said, I'm not a big. I'm not a big fan. So over here, the Messenger of Allah, he would eat watermelon, or he ate watermelon with fresh dates. Again, very similar to the previous hadith. Um, I would say the most that we can take from these hadith is that he ﷺ had no issue mixing certain things. Um, what's interesting here is also the Imam Tirmidhi's tabligh. He said, "Sifat al-Fatiha." Usually we don't associate cucumbers, right? Cucumber fruit. It is. Oh, no. Tomatoes are fruits, right? I don't think fruits and vegetables are a real thing. No, no, it's not real, bro. I think we made it up. I don't think it's a real thing, dude. I'm serious. Are are fruits real? Are fruits, vegetables the real thing? Oh, so here. So this, so this is AI. It says, yes, fruits and vegetables are real, but the distinction is primarily culinary rather than botanical. Hmm. 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 So biologically, all fruits are seed-bearing structures from flowers, while vegetables is a broad culinary term for the other edible plant parts like roots, stems, and leaves. Interesting. Not real. Good. It's edible. Oh, yeah. But see, I would imagine sometimes when it's available, having regular access to fruits and vegetables and bread. I would imagine it depends on like when the caravans came in, because the biggest issue with a lot of this stuff is like how they would store it, right? Like how long can a cucumber last if it's not refrigerated, or a watermelon or melons? Um, they have to be relatively fresh for them to last this long in order for them to be consumed. So I'm not honestly I'm not really sure. Um, so, uh, hmm. Yeah, I mean, it also it depends on the species too, right? And the thing I would take from this is some people would be like, oh, you like eat this combination because it's sunnah. Um, I will say that while there are a group of people who say, oh, eating this combination or eating like this is a sunnah. I would push back and say, okay, well, I think the Prophet some of the things that he did were from his preferences, right? So he would eat certain things because of his personal preference. And the most that we can take from this is bringing these things together is mubah, right? That is permitted to bring these things. Not that we should start, oh, you have to eat this combination because there's more barakah in this combination. Does that make sense? Right? So there are a group of scholars who will say that, like, no, there's more barakah in this combination because he sallallahu this is how he ate. Another group of scholars will be like, no, well, actually, he did it to show that it is permitted, and this was his personal preference in combining. And the reason we can say that with confidence is, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the hadith of Khalid ibn Walid, where he sallallahu was sitting down, he was eating with them, and they brought out a lizard, dabba, and he sallallahu he wasn't eating. And Khalid was like, "Is it haram?" Or like, and the Prophet was like, he's like, "No, I'm just not familiar with it. Like, it's not something that we." Interestingly, he said this is not like laysa ta'am qawmi, like this is not the food of my people, which is interesting because the Prophet and Khalid were both what? They're both Qurayshi, right? So it's not like, oh, they're very different families or stuff like that. Like they're both Qurayshi. It's just something that was like it's something that they ate in Khalid's home and something that they didn't eat in the Prophet's home. Or Khalid was like, he was really adventurous. He was like, yo, food is food. Is it okay to eat it or is it not? And the Prophet was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not comfortable with this. And Khalid was like, say less, right? And he just ate it. And it said like he enjoyed it so much, right? Like he was like drooling a little bit because he was enjoying it so much. But like I said, a hadith like that actually gives us insight into food and his son. Him having a preference doesn't indicate that one food is better than another. That was just his Sallallahu personal preference. Now, if a person wants to eat that because he Sallallahu preferred it, or because he did it, if you're doing it out of love for him Sallallahu, there's a reward. There's no doubt about that. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us all in our love of the Messenger Sallallahu. But just that food itself in that combination does not bring it or have any value. So over here, Abu Hurairah he reports that when the people would see the new fruit of the harvest, meaning like when it's freshly harvested, right, they would bring the fruit to the market, they would bring them to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would take the fruit, he would make dua. He said, "Oh Allah, bless our fruits, bless Medina, right? Bless where we are, and bless our sa'a and our mud. Sa'a is a unit of measurement. So for zakat al-fitr, we have to give one sa'. So where did that kilos come from? So during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, did they have kilos? No. How did they measure? They used to measure with their hands. Ahsan. With their hands. This is a mud. Right, this is a mud. And 4 of these, 1 sa'. Now, is this a weight? This is a volume. So useful, like a full hand. So this, like we don't want to do like this. But so this is 1 mud. And 4 of these. Why? Because it's easy to measure. And having weights and measures standardized, right? This is something that it wasn't really the Arab hadn't started it yet. The only thing that they had standardized 2 things. They said, okay, hey, listen, we accept this as a way of measuring. Right? So they would do this. If I would go to buy rice, they didn't have rice really. But like if I want to go buy wheat, or if I want to go buy dates, or if I want to go, what would I do? I would just take 2, 3, 4, and they would charge by the mud. It was like, okay. They have big hands? Yeah, mashallah. So, so what did the companions do? The companions, what did they standardize? They standardized the mud al-nabawi. Right? They said, okay, you know what? If we're going to use a mud, we need to make it the same. Just like you were thinking. Like this needs to be similar. So what they did is they actually measured the volume of the hand of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they would have him take out something, and then what they did is, I had brought it before, but they have a mud al-nabawi. The other measurement that they would use is from the Romans. So the Romans, whenever they did business with the Arab, they would use gold coins. And the gold coins they would use the lower quality gold coins with the Arab than they did in the kingdom. So what's interesting is that the gold coins that they would use with the Arab, that is actually the weight that we use today. So a regular gold coin in the Byzantine Empire would be 4.5 grams. But the ones that they use with the Arab were actually 4.25. So that 4.25 is where we determine our zakat, based off of that. Right? Because this is the weight of I think 1 dinar. Is it dirham? I don't know. Which one's the gold one? Dinar or dirham? Dinar is the silver, dirham is the gold. I always confuse the two. But so the dirham, the weight of that is what we actually use today to determine the nisab for the it's based off the value of that gold, not of the 4.5 grams, but the 4.25. These two measurements have continued until today, and we still use them for religious calculations, right? So the nisab, the minimum threshold for the zakat, and for zakat al-fitr. So these are the two ways, these are the two things that we still use today to measure for religious purposes. So that's what he's talking about here. So the sa' is for amdad, right? And the mud is, we said, like a handful. It said, "Oh Allah, Ibrahim is your servant and your khalil and your prophet. And I am your servant and your prophet." Why didn't he say I'm your khalil? It's out of humility. He's talking about and honoring Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. He doesn't want to. He's shy to put himself in front of his father Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And he said, just like he made dua for you to go to Mecca, he said, I make dua to go to Medina. With the likes of which he supplicated you, and just like he made dua for Mecca, I make dua for Medina. Then he would call for the youngest child he saw, and he would give him some of that fruit. Again, kindness. Because usually who eats last in a lot of these gatherings? The kids, right? Usually it's the kids that eat the last in these gatherings. I'm okay with that, right? I don't have a problem with that. But it's not survival. I think it's, for me, I think it's a good way of teaching them adab, right? It's a good way of teaching them manners. Like, hey, listen, before you serve yourself, make sure you are what? Make sure you're serving others. Make sure you're serving those who are, who are older than you. Make sure you honor them. It's a personal pet peeve of mine. Like sometimes when we have like food or we have like iftar, I see the kids in the front of the line. Like it bothers me so much. It's like, no, you should be serving the elders. Like this is the culture that we should be teaching and instilling. But here, it doesn't mean that we cannot be kind, because fruits for the Arab at this time, were the fruits something that they would regularly consume or regularly eat? No, not really. So because it was something special, what would he say something to it? Right? He would give it as a gift. You know how we give like candy to kids, right? So I think this is where the sunnah started. of giving candy to kids. Because it's like it's just it's a show of kindness, right? And it's a show of love, and we all want to do it. When we see a kid, we feel the need to gift them something, right? I think all of us have this in our hearts, and this is him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, obviously, being kind and being generous with the children. So I think our kids expect it. I think our kids are spoiled. they expect it. I don't know if that was the case, in previous generations. No. So over here you have Rubayya bint Mu'awwidh ibn Afra, who said that Mu'adh ibn Afra, who was her uncle, he sent me with a tray full of dates and small cucumbers piled on top. And the Prophet ﷺ, he liked the cucumber, so I brought it. She knew, and that the Prophet ﷺ, he liked kufta, that he liked this cucumber. He had some jewelry that was presented to him from Bahrain. Bahrain at that time was basically everything that was on the east coast, right? It's not the island that we talk about today, but the whole east coast was called Bahrain at that time. So he took a handful of it and he gave it to me. So he said, and basically he was brought this gift, by either I'm not sure how old she was in this, either a young woman or a girl, but she brought these things, and what did he do? He gifts her the jewelry, right? So she brings him something that he saw something he loves, right? He loves cucumber, and he had just gotten some food that had come in. So what does he do? He knows he exchanges. He's like, okay, like, you gifted this to me, and this is something that is beloved to me. Let me gift something to you. So I said. So over here, Rubayya, she came to the Prophet ﷺ carrying a tray full of fresh dates with small cucumbers on top. And he they're described as zulf. Zulf is like, you know the uh, the points or like the hair, like sometimes on the cucumber, but it has like little, I don't want to call them pimples, but like like the dimples, like the small cucumbers. Like remember the Turkish ones I was telling you about? Like, so they have like more dimples and like they have more of these things on it. So this is what zulf means. So like it has those on it. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave me a handful of food. And I think another important lesson here is when we look at this hadith is like the generosity of the Prophet ﷺ can never be matched. So she came, all right, like Mu'adh, he sent his niece to go give this and like show generosity to the Prophet ﷺ. So what does he do? He shows even more generosity back, right? So this is describing the drinks of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So over here, Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that the most beloved of drinks to the Messenger of Allah were those that were sweet and cool. So over here, Ahmed al-Muni', he narrated to us that through this different chain, that Ibn Abbas who said, Khalid ibn Walid and I went along with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he went to see Maymuna. She brought us a vessel full of milk, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam drank from it. I was on his right, and Khalid radiallahu was on his left. And he said to me, the drink is yours, but if you want, you can give preference to Khalid. Meaning that she gave it to him, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did he do? He gave it to his right. And he's like, if you want to drink it, you can, or you can give it to Khalid. So I said, I'm not about to give up your leftovers for anyone else. And the Messenger of Allah said, the one whom Allah gives food should say, oh Allah, bless us in it and give us to eat from what is better than it. And the one whom Allah gives a drink of milk should say, oh Allah, bless us in it and increase us in it. Then he said, there's nothing that takes the place of food and drink beside milk. Meaning that his favorite drink was milk. Ibn Abbas. Yeah. Yeah, because he was on his right. He was to his right. Yeah, he wanted to give him a choice, and to show that it's not you have a choice, right? And I think sometimes we feel obligated, and by him saying that in front of Khalid, radiallahu anhu, what happened? It makes him aware also that, well, no, the choice is actually his. I'm giving it to him. I mean, the other thing that is unique about Ibn Abbas, obviously in this narration as well, is that he was from Ahlul Bayt, right? Right? He's from the family of the Messenger of Allah, and they have the fadila, and they have the sharaf and honor over others. Um, but like I said, there are situations where you have a genuine choice, and not just that. They weren't going hungry or thirsty, meaning that they had gotten there and they're fine, and she happened to have milk and she brought it out. She knew that Prophet loved milk, and he drank it. There was some left over. He gives it to Ibn Abbas, and he's like, hey, if you want to give some to Khalid, you can. And Ibn Abbas is like, what? He's like, no, I'm not going to give it. Interestingly enough, Ibn Abbas at this point, he's still young. He's still very young. I want to say maybe he was like 10 or 12 at this time. He was still really young. But again, teaching lessons, teaching adab, teaching manners to both Ibn Abbas and to Khalid. And Khalid, he doesn't say like, well, what about me? Like, right? He knows that the moment that Ibn Abbas is given a choice, the choice is his, and he is the one who is free to make that choice. I think he's like 10 to 12 maybe at this time. I'm not, because the Khalid, he became Muslim the year before Fatih Makkah. So this is still relatively late in the Hijrah. So you're talking about like 8 Hijri. Huh? Khalid was older. He was definitely older. He was already leading. He was leading expeditions and armies at this point. So he was an adult. Maybe. I'll double check. Yeah. Like he's young. He's saying no to this grown man. I think that makes the dynamic very interesting, and not just that. It's like it's one of those tarbiyah things, and I think sometimes we forget this as parents that our children are independent, right? They're independent. They're independent beings, and in order to respect them, one of the easiest ways to respect them is to give them choice, right? And not just give them choice, but when we say like, okay, hey, listen, you can do this or that. When they make a choice, I have to what? I have to respect it, right? I have to respect it. If I'm giving a choice, I have to respect their decision. This is a way for us to instill respect in them, so that they're going to respect us when we make our decisions. So what? No. Yeah. It was the hijab was what, like second year, I think. So if Khalid is in the story, this is definitely happening by at least year 8 of the hijab. So the hijab, what is it? The hijab mandate? Does it mandate separation or does it mandate dress? The dress, right? So is it okay for, like, you have this hadith, you have a number of other hadith too. There's another hadith, I think it's in Bukhari, where a man got married and the wife, she was serving the guests. The new wife, the new bride, right? Like she's serving the guests. I think there's a lot of confusion around the term. A lot of people like throwing around as if like premixing. But I would argue that there are a number of spaces and places where mixing do happen. One of those places in tawaf, right? There's no tawaf ring for women and tawaf ring for men. And the Prophet he didn't forbid it. The marketplace, he didn't have a marketplace for men and a marketplace for women. Right? There's only one marketplace. Um, the entrance for Masjid Nabawi was one. It was a singular entrance. Everybody came from the same one. So the question isn't about, okay, I think there's a natural separation of genders, which happens. I think there's separation in prayer, which also happens, even though they're in the same space. Right? They didn't have like dividers, walls, and things like that during the time of Prophet. He would engage with the sister-in-laws too. Right? So he would have conversation with Hala, who was Khadija anha's sister. He would engage with Asma, who was Aisha anha's sister. But he himself says about the brother-in-law, he said, Alhamdulillah. So the real question is like, okay, well, when we talk about like hijab and when we talk about engagement and when we talk about like intergender interactions, what does that actually mean? I think it means that we're supposed to have respectful interactions with each other, and we should have a heightened sense of awareness when we speak and when we talk to each other. Not that we should remove them. And the reason I say that is because when you have a complete separation of genders, what happens is that, especially for men, they fail to know how to deal with women. Like they just don't know how to deal with women. Especially those who don't have sisters, right? So the only person they've ever dealt with is their mother. But if you don't know how to deal with women outside of the family in a respectful way, then they will never be respected. Right? They're just always going to be treated as sexual objects because that's all you know, right? Like so, if I've never had a meaningful engagement with the person, and again, I'm not advocating that men and women should sit together and be no, absolutely not, right? Like I think that just opens the door to fitna. But what I am advocating for is like, okay, if you have, for example, a masjid, during the day, the majority of the men are where? They're working. Right? And it's still culturally, even in American culture, right? Like it's usually the men that are working. And if women work, some of them work part-time and some of them don't work at all. Who's taking care of the masjid? Who's setting up the programs? Who's bringing the kids to the classes? Who? It's an honest question. Because if the men are busy and they can't, well then who has to? The women do. Okay, well who has to staff those programs? Who's going to take care of it? Who's going to do the oversight? Who's going to teach? Right? Like, I think historically, Islamically, men have always been teachers, always, right? Like yourself. It doesn't mean that women can't be, but in general they're not, right? There are certain spaces that women don't enter. So if you guys have ever gone into, if you go to most schools, like most colleges or universities that have nursing programs or education programs, the vast majority are what? Are women. Vast majority. Nobody ever says like, oh, where are the men, right? Like, it's just a reality when you have a natural segregation of genders in different spaces. If you go to engineering departments, vast majority of them are they're men, right? It is what it is. It's not a right or wrong thing. Like men should be like this. No. There's a natural segregation that happens between men and women. Men tend to take more riskier positions, right? So if you carpenters, roofers, oil rigs, 99% of the people in that space are what? Are men, right? No, nobody says, "Oh, we need more women bricklayers," right? Nobody says that. I think it's very silly, this idea of like, oh, it has to be equal in every space, right? That's not even practical. It's not even realistic because you're not respecting gender preference in spaces. So for men are generally they're leaders. Generally, that's historically it's always been like that. Does that make men greater or no? It has nothing to do with being greater. And akramakum indallahi atqakum, right? The most honored of you in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's eyes are the ones who have the most taqwa. So men take leadership positions. Okay, well if men are taking all the leadership positions, who takes the support positions? Women. And if you have a leadership and a support position, can it function without interaction? You have to. You have to. But I've had people come to me and they're like, oh, well, you're an imam, blah, blah, blah. I deal with more women than most people do. Like, I deal with a lot of women. It's the nature of the work. Because most of the dawah spaces, like if you want to talk about setting up, if you want to talk about programming, if you want to talk about organizing, if you want to talk about support structures, if you want to talk about teachers, vast majority of them. And the reason that we're so comfortably say that is because when we come to the musalla, all we see is what? All we see is men. And I'm not saying this to put anybody down. How many of the men here volunteer in the Sunday school? How many of the men volunteer for the daycare programs? How many of the men volunteer here for teaching? And this does not make less of a person. I'm not blaming anyone. I just want all of us to kind of have like a realistic understanding of, all right, well, if this is the case, how do we have meaningful interaction? We have to have respectful interactions. If I say salam, it's okay. If I recognize someone, it's okay. If I see a woman struggling, and I've experienced this in very highly segregated societies. They will see a woman holding a baby, pushing a stroller, trying to walk. Nobody will help her because they're like, oh, this is wrong. Oh, this shouldn't happen. This is not a respectful interaction. And we have to understand what respectful interactions look like. And it cannot happen. It cannot happen if we continue No, we want to pray, of course. I want to pray too. Oh, he wants to pray right now. It's still a minute until that. Is it? Is it? No, no, it's 37. Yeah, I know. I'm good on my time. Alhamdulillah. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I won't even say a need, right? Like a need is darura. I'll say if there's a haja, if there's a call for it, right? As long as you're not making small talk, you're not doing this. We have to have respectful interactions. But we ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to give us tawfiq and allow us to be respected, like allow us to respect our sisters and our sisters to respect us. وقولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم.